They guide our decisions and our actions. We commit to learn, to educate, to honor sacred places, and to take action towards real truth and reconciliation. Miigwech. And in addition, we want to acknowledge the commitment of residents of Georgian Bay Township. We recognize that this municipality operates because of the financial support and volunteerism of a diverse community, including seasonal and full-time residents, volunteers, and businesses who sustain our services, infrastructure, staff, and local democracy. We all share a common interest in having a transparent, fiscally responsible, well-governed municipality. Council, the corporation, including its municipal staff, commit to serving with accountability, fiscal responsibility, environmental stewardship, and to create a service-oriented culture that focuses on helping and acting in the best interest of the community. Thank you. Council, any declarations of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest or anything else you think we should know at this time? We have two members of council who are not here. Both plan on signing in shortly, I believe. We'll have to make sure they're clear to go as well. Madam Clerk, any open forum applicants? No. Well, then we're going to go on to the Municipal Act public meeting section. And, you know, I love planning council because I always get to make speeches. Here goes speech one for the day. This morning, there is a public meeting scheduled for one Shore Road closing application. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the meeting. First, the clerk will advise council as to when, how, and to whom notice of the public meeting was circulated for the proposed road closing being considered. Next, staff will advise of the purpose and effect of the bylaws and provide for any other information that is relevant to the applications, and staff will summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the public will have an opportunity to speak and to provide comments to the bylaw being considered. Please be respectful of time and be concise with your comments. All commentators are requested to state their name and address. Council will then have an opportunity to provide comments for clarification. I now declare this meeting to be a public meeting pursuant to the Municipal Act of 2001 C-25 as amended to deal with the following proposed road closing bylaw. R26-03 for 1110 East Shore Road. To our clerk.
Notice of the public meeting was digitally published in a virtual newspaper and was sent to the abutting neighbors in the close proximity of the property at least 30 days prior to this morning's meeting.
Thank you. And to our deputy clerk, Ms. Levesque, this is your report, I believe. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is before Council to consider the closure and conveyance of a portion of the Shore Road Allowance located in front of 1110 East Shore Road. The application proposes to close and convey Part 1 on Plan 35R-28005 with approximately 52.7 meters of shoreline frontage. The purchase price has been calculated at $12,758.96 plus HST in accordance with the Township's Fees and Charges bylaw. The purpose of the application is to support the installation of a new dock. During review, minor encroachments from a neighboring property were identified and have since been resolved through an agreement between both property owners. The application was circulated to external agencies and neighboring properties, and no comments or objections were received. Staff have reviewed the application against the Township Shore Road Allowance policy and are satisfied that all requirements have been met. There's no financial impact to the Township. All costs are borne by the applicant, and the transaction will result in revenue. Here's an overview of the subject lands. The property is located on Gibson Lake along East Shore Road. The site sketch illustrates the location of the existing dwelling and surrounding features. I'll just zoom in here onto Part 1. It also identifies the minor encroachments from the neighboring property, which again have been addressed through a private agreement between the owners. The existing woodshed will remain and the water line will be relocated onto the neighboring property once weather permits. The survey shows Part 1, which represents the portion of the Shore Road allowance proposed to be closed and conveyed. And based on the information presented, staff recommend council approve the closure and conveyance of the subject lands and adopt the associated closing and deeming bylaws. I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Well, thank you very much for that. Council, any questions or comments? Councillor Jarvis, welcome. I have to give you a personal question, or do you have any conflict of interest or pecuniary interest to declare?
None whatsoever. Thank you very much for asking.
Then please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, my question is more a statement. Sydney, is it possible in future to circle the conflicts in a situation like this? Because my eyes went immediately to the shed in the middle of the beach property in the SRA, which obviously belongs to the people making the application, not the people next door. And I was trying to figure out why a shed in the middle of somebody's property that belonged to somebody else was going to be allowed. Because I couldn't immediately see the shed that was just bordering the property on both properties. Yeah. So the wood-sided shed in the middle of the property is the one I looked at immediately.
Through your worship, to Councillor Jarvis, it's this shed right here you can see on
on my fourth purview of the things, I realized that was what was being discussed. But for quick reference, if you wouldn't mind, can we put a red circle around these things in the future for reference purposes?
Yes, of course.
That'd be very helpful. Otherwise, I have no objections. Thank you.
I should note, Councillor Jarvis, while you're making that observation, we had a blast of thunder here, so the gods are commenting on your remarks.
Yeah, there's been a little bit of that around here too. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm going to read the motion. We have moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by, I'm going to change that to Councillor Predko because I don't think Councillor Graziano signed in yet. Okay, moved by Councillor Bocek.
I'm here, you were.
Oh, okay. Well, I've now made the change, but that, Councillor Graziano, now that you're here, I'm just going to double check with you. Any conflicts of interest or pecuniary interest on today's agenda?
None, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Predko. Be it resolved that Council pass the closing bylaw 2026-020 to stop up, close, and convey part of the original Shore Road allowance line in front of Lot 14, Concession 2, being Part 1 of Plan 35R-28005, formerly Gibson, now in the Township of Georgian Bay, the District Municipality of Muskoka, or 1110 East Shore Road, for the purchase price of $12,758.96, subject to all applicable taxes, costs, and fees being paid in full, and that Council passed a deeming bylaw 2026-021, part of Plan M296, formerly Gibson, now in the Township of Georgian Bay, the District Municipality of Muskoka, not to be a registered plan of subdivision for the purpose of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13S53. And that Council authorizes the Mayor and Clerk to execute any documents necessary to complete the conveyance. All those in favor? All right, I got hands everywhere. That is carried. Thank you very much. All right, so that closes that section of our meeting. And next, Planning Act public meetings. This morning, there is a public meeting scheduled for 3 proposed zoning bylaw amendment and 1 official plan amendment. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the meeting. First, the clerk will advise council as to when, how, and to whom notice of the public meeting was circulated for the proposed amendments being considered. The clerk will also advise of the appeal procedures. Next, staff will advise of the purpose and effect of the bylaws and provide any other information that is relevant to the applications, and the clerk will summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the public will have an opportunity to provide comments on the amendments being considered. Please be respectful of time and be concise with your comments. All commentators are requested to state their name and address and sign in on the sheets provided, presuming you're in person. After the public discussion, the public meeting will be closed. Council will then have an opportunity to provide comments for clarification. I now declare this meeting to be a public meeting pursuant to Section 22 and 34 of the Planning Act to deal with the following proposed amendments. A, zoning bylaw amendment file Z26-03 for 142 La Valley Way. B, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment file O26-01 and Z26-04 for 146 Prisque Road. And I guess that's it. To the clerk, please.
Notice of the public meeting was sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 to 800 meters of the property subject to the proposed applications, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the applications. These notices were sent at least 30 days prior to this morning's meeting. Included in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposed applications and a key map showing the location of the properties or description of the lands to be affected by the proposed amendments. Other relevant information may also have been provided. These circulations were all provided in accordance with provisions of the Planning Act and the Township of Georgian Bay official plan. Members of the public are advised at this point that unless they make an oral or written submission to council before council makes a decision on these applications, that any subsequent appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal may be dismissed by the tribunal. Anyone who wishes to be notified of council's decision respecting the proposed zoning bylaw amendments must submit a written request to the planning department.
Thank you. So our first item is zoning bylaw amendment Z26-03. And while you're at it, Madam Clerk, any correspondence to report?
One letter was received from Kaylee Nicholson, Chief Building Official, stating a permit is required for any structure over 10 meters square because the property is a narrow channel. Transport Canada approval and possibly authorization under the Canadian Navigable Waters Act is required first. Any accessory shed 15 meters square or smaller does not require a building permit if it is only 1 story, unattached, has no plumbing, and is used only for storage. Otherwise, a permit would be required. And one letter was received from the District of Muskoka stating staff cannot support the application because the proposed residential mooring facility, including a dock, parking area, and storage shed, is located within a provincially significant wetland where development is not permitted unless an OWES evaluation proves otherwise, and the existing studies confirm the PSW boundary extends across the entire frontage.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our planner, Madam Wonfor, on the file. And if you can provide your overview of the situation, please.
Thank you, and through the mayor. The subject lands have an area of approximately 5,500 square meters and 35.4 meters of frontage on South Bay. The lands are forested, vacant, and abut a narrow channel shared with Lowney Island. The purpose and effect of the application is to rezone the subject lands from a shoreline residential type 1 zone to a shoreline residential type 1 exception zone, to establish a residential mooring facility as the only permitted use, containing a dock located in an environmental protection provincially significant wetland zone, a parking area, and a storage shed. The property is intended to function as an individual water access point for an island property located directly adjacent to the subject lands, which is under the same ownership. The subject lands abut a provincially significant wetland known as Honey Harbor Wetland. In accordance with the provincial planning statement, development and site alteration shall not be permitted in significant wetlands unless it has been demonstrated that there will be no negative impacts on the natural features or their ecological functions or within fish habitat except in accordance with provincial and federal requirements. An environmental impact study prepared by Riverstone Environmental Solutions concluded that the proposed development is very unlikely to result in negative impacts or associated ecological functions, provided recommended mitigation measures are implemented. Hutchison Environmental Sciences peer-reviewed the EIS and identified numerous deficiencies. Riverstone subsequently revised the EIS to address these comments by providing additional fish habitat information, clarifying PSW boundaries, updating site layout figures, correcting references to septic systems, and strengthening mitigation and timing recommendations. Planning staff are satisfied that the revisions adequately address the peer review comments and have confirmed that Riverstone will consult with the province regarding the need for further assessment, resulting in no requirement for a second peer review.
The subject lands are a designated waterfront area and are identified as having moderate to high archaeological potential, low to extreme wildfire hazard ratings, and within a deer wintering area known as Stratum 2. The shoreline abutting the lands contains a provincially significant wetland, which was identified in the EIS as containing Type 1 fish habitat. The district official plan identifies the waterfront area as a low-density designation intended to protect ecological functions, shoreline character, visual aesthetics, and natural landscape features, while allowing appropriate recreational, residential, and limited commercial uses. Development is required to be compatible with existing character and to conserve significant natural features, with more detailed policies provided in local municipal official plans. The plan recognizes archaeological potential and wildland fire risk, directing development away from hazardous areas and less risk and are properly mitigated, and noting that legal obligations under the Ontario Heritage Act remain applicable. Natural heritage policies emphasize protecting biodiversity, wetlands, and wildlife, with development or site alteration generally prohibited in provincially significant wetlands and other sensitive features unless supported by an environmental impact study. The lands are designated waterfront within the South Bay Special Policy Area of the Honey Harbor Coastal Waterfront Community, where low-density residential uses, accessory uses, and individual water access points are permitted. The applicant is proposing an individual water access point, which is a primary permitted use and is defined as a mainland parking and docking facility which serves a maximum of 3 residential water access dwellings and is not associated with the commercial or marina property, but may be associated with a residential use. The establishment of new or expanded individual water access points shall conform to natural heritage and areas of use limitation policies. New individual water access points shall be subject to a zoning bylaw amendment and may be subject to site plan control or other municipal agreements. Community and site-specific policies emphasize protecting natural heritage, managing shoreline activity, maintaining scenic character, and limiting shoreline development to a maximum of 25% of lot frontage. Additional constraints apply due to South Bay's carrying capacity, narrow water body conditions, and navigation safety concerns, which restrict new development and regulate the size and location of shoreline structures. Note that the District of Muskoka's Lake System Health Water Quality Monitoring Program 2024 annual report found South Bay as not vulnerable. The lands are zoned shoreline residential type 1, which permits a detached dwelling and accessory uses. The property abuts an environmental protection provincially significant wetland zone, which requires a minimum 15-meter setback, and lands within 15 meters of the high water mark are generally required to be maintained in a natural state, with shoreline activity areas limited to 25% of the shoreline length and area. Due to the narrow water body, a dock is limited to a maximum projection of 7 meters. A minimum setback of 5 meters from the straight line projection of the side lot lines is also required. A zoning bylaw amendment is required to permit a residential mooring facility and a dock within the EP-PSW zone at a 4-meter side yard setback, as well as the associated parking area, storage shed, and walkway within the SR1 zone. Planning staff are of the opinion that the application should be revised to include rezoning the water from the EP-PSW zone to an EP-PSW exception zone in order to permit the proposed dock. The public meeting is intended solely to convey information and receive comments. It provides an opportunity for ongoing dialogue among the public, the owner, an agent, council, the district, and commenting agencies. Planning staff are recommending a detailed recommendation report and bylaw be brought to a subsequent meeting for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know that what appears to be the owner is online. I don't know if they wish to make a comment. I certainly see that their agent is in the room. And I haven't seen the hand gone up from the owner, so I'm assuming they're trusting you to speak on their behalf, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council and staff. My name is Stefan Sherbach. I'm with Planscape Inc., 104 Kimberley Avenue in Bracebridge, P1L 1Z8. Yes, you're correct. The owners are online. If there's any questions that I can't answer, if there's anything outside of the planning realm, they may chime in. I'm here on behalf of the Myers, the owner of the subject lands on Georgian Bay. They own obviously the northernmost lot on Island 890, which is directly adjacent to the subject lands. They've owned this property for many years. The intention was that at some point, mainland access would be the ideal spot for the island. They've chosen to take advantage of a marina operation for many years. They've just decided that it makes sense financially and otherwise, being so close to the island, that they wanted to proceed with this application. This was initiated in 2025 following a pre-consultation with staff. Staff provided the direction to proceed with a zoning bylaw amendment application to permit this residential mooring facility as a permitted use. This is as per the direction of your official plan. The planner is absolutely correct that any new mooring facilities are to proceed through a zoning amendment so that we can have this dialogue, circulate the neighbors, and conduct any study reviews that are required. The proposal includes a very small storage building, obviously to store life jackets, fuel tanks, things like that, for which is typical for an individual mooring facility. Parking area, of course, a small pathway to the waterfront, and a floating dock. The lands will remain Shoreline Residential 1. This is the current zone. The applicants do have the right to build a cottage on the property as it stands today under this specific zone. And this application is actually going to remove that right and only permit the residential mooring facility with just the dock and the shed at this point. There's a minor reduction to the side yard setback from 5 meters to 4 meters. This was a recommendation of the ecological report. The ecologist was requesting that this dock facility be pushed to the far end as close as possible. We figured a 1 meter setback, 1 meter variance to the required setback is reasonable in this instance, more to move away from the sensitive vegetation and sensitive wetland features that were found in front of the property, and also to afford proper water depth. There's the depth of the water in that area to the bed is a little more on that one side, and that hence the reason and the requirement there. So if I could move to the next slide, please. I've got, and one more, please. Again, the property is 1.37 acres in size. It has just over 100 feet of frontage. You can see that it's very consistent with the development pattern on this stretch of land. There's several existing cottage properties. You will also note in that plan as well that there are a number of docks that currently exist within the provincially significant wetland, and development occurs both on the opposite side of this property. Coverage, proposed coverage is obviously very small with a shed. In the next slide, the shoreline, as mentioned, is correctly identified as part of the Honey Harbor provincially significant wetland with type 1 fish habitat. In response to this feature, an environmental impact assessment was completed to evaluate the appropriateness of this proposal. And again, this is acknowledged in the staff report. I'm going to reiterate the conclusion of that report, and that there's going to be a very low likelihood of a negative impact of any significant natural features and associated ecological functions from this proposed use, and more importantly, the dock. Any potential impacts can be avoided or acceptably minimized through the compliance with its recommendations. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the next slide does highlight a few of those key recommendations. Strict adherence to 30-meter shoreline vegetation, tree and vegetation retention in the buffered areas, sediment and erosion controls during any grading, parking lot, vegetation removal, permeable driveway, gravel, no paving to ensure groundwater infiltration, avoidance of fish spawning windows, and tree cutting limitations to preserve the potential of any species at risk that are on the property, and standard things like downward directed lighting to minimize light spill onto the natural areas, plus a number of other recommendations. Within the next slide, we do note that the district has recommended that this application be denied on the provincial policy statement. However, it's important to note that the authority having jurisdiction, the Ministry of Natural Resources, has provided written an email to the ecologist at Riverstone where the province recognizes existing lots of records that front onto provincially significant wetlands do have a right through the province to permit a dock and even in some cases a boathouse. Existing lots of records are saying that there are rights associated with that. Yes, it's subject to municipal rules and regulations. Yes, your zoning bylaw doesn't permit docks in a provincially significant wetland. However, the rezoning applications allows the municipality to get an ecological report to assess the impacts, potential impacts, and provide a list of recommendations for the protection of the feature with the proposed development. That's exactly what's happening here. Again, keeping in mind that the docks are permitted, provided that its footprint does not exceed 15 square meters. It's not to say anything over 15 square meters would be prohibited. It's just they would have to go through the land use permit process through the Ministry of Natural Resources. Rest assured, though, that this 15 square meters is a footprint on the shore bed. A floating dock has zero footprint on the shore bed. So the recommendations from the ecological report is to have a floating dock, no disruption of the bed of the lake, no disruption on the wetland feature, situated to one side to achieve water depth. The applicants are going to maintain your maximum projection of 7 meters out into the water, and again, pushing it to the one side of the property ensures proper water depth and the protection of the sensitive vegetation, which appears on the opposite side of the report. Again, Riverstone has conducted this assessment, and in Riverstone's mind that it has met the intent of the PPS as it relates to structures in a PSW, and again, confirmation from the authority having jurisdiction that this is permitted under their purview. The next slide, again, well, precedent is not relied on as planning justification. It's important to understand the context of the surrounding areas. Lots of higher intensity of use with residential properties with docks that are surrounding the area and also located in front of the provincially significant wetland. This application, although they have the right to build a cottage, they don't have a right to build a dock. The alternative is they could get a pontoon boat, drag it up on the shore, which would have more of an impact to the shoreline than if we were to follow with the recommendations of the ecological report. Again, the municipality has the ability through site plan control to ensure those recommendations are registered on title and that they're followed. The proposal, again, this is a more controlled development. It's an environmentally responsive approach. It's downzoning the actual property, again, when in comparison to those in the surrounding area. In the next slide, looking at the physical context of the site, you can see how close the island is. This is not a navigable waterway. The building chief building official is suggesting a permit through Transport Canada. That's fine. The applicants are willing to do that as part of the building permit stage. It's not going to be a problem. I don't even think you can get jet skis in and around that area. It's likely canoes, kayaks, and those types of things. But you can see the water depths through that one plan. The idea is to go out. That is their dock and boathouse across the way. It's very close. The applicants have also suggested that they be willing to sell their inboard outboard boat. They wanted to get something like a pontoon boat, which has very little draft as it relates to that. And, of course, they're going to be very sensitive to that. In one sense, they were also joking that they would just get a huckleberry fin raft and just sort of find their way across the way. But again, this is something that the applicants are willing to do, and if necessary, it could also be implemented in the site plan agreement report to ensure the protection of this feature. Just wrapping up on the last slide, from a planning perspective, this proposal represents a lower impact, site-specific use than what currently exists. by providing a dedicated private mainland access point to the abutting island right across the way. Formalizing the mooring use at the site, the proposal is also expected to reduce the reliance on the marina access, one less boat traveling a greater distance. This one is just, back and forth. The requested setback that accompanies this is minor in respect to its context, again, to ensure that it's positioned in the best spot on the lot as per the recommendations of the professional ecologists. So, Mr. Chair and council members, it's our opinion that the application is consistent with the intent of the township's official plan. It fulfills the requirements of the zoning bylaw subject to the 1 meter variance. I agree the application should have included a variance to the permitted dock in a PSW. That's always been the intent. There's no issue at all revising that application. And we're hopeful that since the intent hasn't changed, recirculation is not necessary, but I can work through those details with staff. The application represents good planning and maintains the natural character of the waterfront in this area. Thanks very much for your time. And I look forward to working with staff and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this application? And I see the hand raised of the owner. Oh, you brought him over. Mr. Myers, do you wish to speak to this application?
Mute. Okay, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Yes, sir.
Okay, just very quickly, as of next year, the family will have owned this property for 100 years. And if you know the property, you'll know how sensitive they've always been to the ecology and the environment. The island has got minimal structures on it and has always been well taken care of. And that's our intent with this property is we just want to be able to use the lot. Basically for our use would probably be less than a couple months out of the year. The longest these cottages have ever been open has been, I think, 3 months. So there'd be minimal use of the property. The marinas have gotten complicated and expensive, and we thought, well, we've got this asset, why not use it? So that's basically where we're at. And, minimal activity on that lot. There'll be minimal. There won't be any permanent structures as such. The gravel road, the shed, they're all easily removed. Anyway, thanks for your consideration.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to make any comments? All right. Given that I'm faced with silence, council, any questions or comments? Councilor Jarvis, we'll start with you, please, sir.
Thank you, and through you, the mayor. I really do wish that Mr. Myers owned the property immediately to the left, and that was the property we were talking about. This one presents some very, very interesting issues, and obviously Mr. Myers and his family will know, and I've pulled up the GeoHub map for 2013, and you could virtually walk across that channel to the island. And I think the docking area, though, would remain to be examined. If you look at that 2013 aerial photo, the placement of that dock would be on dry land. Again, this is an issue we've had to contend with on a number of applications over the years. It's not only high water, but low water. Mr. Zerback's arguments are very convincing. I agree. Having one less boat traveling from a marina to the island would be preferable. Having something that gets towed across to the boathouse, it seems to make a whole heck of a lot more sense. But I am very concerned that access, given climate change and where water levels may or may not be headed, that dock's usefulness will be rather limited. And yeah, I don't know if anybody wants to pull up the GeoHub, but it's very easy to find it and pull up that photo from 2013. I also did 2008, which is before that low water period. And Mr. Myers may also recall, I think it was 65, 66, when again we had low water. I'm not sure what the situation was between the island and mainland then, but I'm sure it was similar. My recommendation, I don't know what to do with this thing, but my thinking is heck, they should build a bridge across. If water's low enough, they should do it that way. Anyway, I do have one question for Mr. Myers, Mr. Zerback. There is more than one property on this island, correct?
Yes, there is the island. A little quick history. My wife's grandfather bought the island in 1927. They built the first cottage, which I and my son now own. My wife passed away 5 years ago, and we inherited that property. The other half, which you call the east half, is owned by descendants of the grandfather, and the widow of his grandson now owns that side of the property. And so there's two little cottages on the east side. There's our cottage on the west side. And yes, the shallow water, in fact, you say 65, 66, that was before my wife and I got married, so I'm not familiar with that. But the other years, yes, and we've seen ankle deep water. But if you know the area where we swim there, where we want to put the boathouse is in a drop-off area from that channel. That channel on both ends of it gets shallow, and I've joked that someday I'm going to get scuba gear and go down and see what that is. It's like a cliff. And our boathouse last year was a minimum 5 feet of water near the shoreline, and as soon as you got off the end of the dock, it was 20 feet deep. So there is a deep pool there. And that's where the other neighbors' docks are set. So yeah, we've considered that. And my son is an engineer, and he would love for us to be able to build a bridge across there. But we don't know how you get permission to do that. But we have warned over the years, we have warned people that try to go through there with power boats, hey, stop, you don't do that. And we've heard outdrives and propellers being crunched. Now, you can get through with a kayak, but sometimes even a kayak will rub their bottom on the rocks in the really shallow areas. So yeah, you're correct. It is shallow at times, but most of the times, in all the years I've been going up there, it's been navigable up to the neighbor's docks and where we intend to put the floating dock.
Yeah, and that's my question to planning, and maybe Mr. Zerback, you seem to have partially answered it, is where would the dock be if we looked at that aerial photo from 2013, where would the dock be? And what would be the water depth at that point? Because that'd be very, very good information to have. Be a little bit more relevant to, I think, our discussions here today. One further question, and Mr. Myers, maybe you can help me here. The other property owners, do they have similar land access to you, or are they definitely have to use a marina to get to their property?
Am I still on? They have the other adjacent lot. When the island was split after the grandparents' death, they got that lot used to be one piece, and that we're talking about, and the subject property, but that was divided in half, and the relatives got the eastern half. And no, they don't. They would not have the water access that we do. I don't know what their intentions are. We've not offered them the ability to use this dock if we get it built. That's something that might be decided in the future, but it would certainly still be family use, and again, minimum use like we're proposing now. They currently rent at the marina that is going co-op or condo or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons for the decision. There was a lot. To stay at the marina would have probably cost us as much as putting in the dock. And so, we said, why not use our asset?
Yeah. Thank you for answering those questions. Again, to our planning department, to Mr. Zerback, it really would be useful to know what the water depth is currently at the spot where the dock is going to be, and pretend what the potential is in low water. Those are the questions I would have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Bocek, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, a little bit of a different opinion here. My main concern is the provincially significant wetlands, but I've learned over my 3 terms of council that as long as it's a floating dock, it actually adds to the ability of fish to spawn. All you have to do is walk out on a floating dock and you see the sunfish and the smallmouth bass and everything. That's what they use for their spawning grounds. And I don't know how they call this a provincially significant wetlands when it goes dry. How that is a provincially significant wetlands when there's no water in it is far beyond my comprehension. And further to that, if the water does drop and the dock is on the ground, as far as I'm concerned, that's not our concern. That's the property owner's concern. And I don't think the basis of the application should be scrutinized by the water level, because if your permit is issued and you build the dock and it sits on the bottom, it's not our problem. That's your problem. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Hazelton, followed by Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, you came up with a rather brilliant idea. So let's ask our planning department, how do you get permit to build a bridge?
I think I would start with 2 agencies, sorry, through the mayor, both M&R and Transport Canada, because it's still a waterway.
So thank you for that. I personally, what Councillor Jarvis observed, and I observed the same thing in the same time window, it's a useless place for a boat. The dock will be on the bottom. You won't be able to drive a boat to the dock in low water. The water's going down further, supposedly, according to all the experts, governments, both US and Canada. And so the picture that we see from 2013, where it's 2/3 of the way across is all bare, it's open, to me, like if you want a dock, you've got to be able to get to it. And if the dock's on the bottom, you're not getting your boat anywhere close to it. So I don't understand how we can even be thinking about a dock. In high water, yeah, but we have to make decisions that cover high water and low water. And so back to Councillor Jarvis's comment and suggestion, I think you should seriously consider diverting your attention to the concept of a bridge. It's only 60 feet across that channel. And with all of the expert technology that dock builders have these days, you could build a bridge probably 5 or 6 feet wide, run an ATV across it, and have a way better solution than a dock that's going to be on the bottom for decades, between decades. And I guess my final concern is we've got precedent in our township preventing people from building docks in F1 fish habitats and EPPSWs. I'm not sure that this is a path that we should even be thinking. I think Councillor Jarvis nailed it with build a bridge.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
I'll just say sort of ditto on some of those comments just made. But I would like to know if what we see here in 2013 reoccurs, which it always will on Georgian Bay, only maybe longer periods with low water. It's quite potentially possible. What I'm concerned about is that if we approve this, what's to stop the applicant during a low water year coming in and saying, I want to dredge in a wetland, in an area, and I haven't seen anything in the language. Maybe I missed it. Was there any commentary and thought given to dredging or the potential of somebody coming to the township to ask to have access to their dock and then do some dredging? I would be very disappointed to see dredging. And just to the comment, there are other places in Georgian Bay that are have been denied any sort of building permits at all because if you look at 2013, there's a mud flat. And essentially that's more or less what we see here. So that it's concerning. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did have a question.
Oh,
About dredging.
Okay.
Is there anything in the application?
Through the mayor, for the property owners to dredge, they would actually need to apply to do so through the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. They would need to get permission from them.
Have they applied? Is that what you're saying?
No.
But they haven't applied, but they could apply, so we could get dredging there potentially. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, yes, they could apply for a permit with MNR.
Yeah. So that also, I'm sorry, but that's concerns me significantly. Thank you.
If I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, just on that note as well, yeah, you're absolutely right. That an application would be submitted to the Ministry of Natural Resources for any potential dredging. I would suspect that since they are the authority of having jurisdiction, they would have they would further scrutinize doing works in a wetland. I think a dredging is going to have a lot more impact than a floating dock. You know, in that instance, would they accept it? Of course, we don't know that, but I would suspect that they would have a difficult time approving that. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the application is also sent to the municipality to ensure, you know, that there's some review from a zoning perspective as well. So the ability for the municipality to provide some comments during that application is also there. Do they have any intentions to do it? No. The ecologist did go out, and that's the very reason why we're asking for that 1 meter. I mean, they'd love to move it even up to the property line, but let's respect the property owner, provide a bit of a buffer. So instead of the 5 meter setback, they're looking for a 4 meter setback. And again, that's to provide a deeper water area, which is evident, you know, in the air photographs. And I think, if I may respond to the depth issue, I think the one thing that we can say about islanders is that they're very resilient under certain circumstances. Their main boat is going to be in the boathouse on the island. This is just something to get to the island. If there's a circumstance where they need to jump in a kayak, pick up the main boat and go to a landing to unload the car, that's what they're going to do. That's what islanders do. You know, the boat themselves from the mainland to the island is typically a tin boat. And in this case, they just said something with even less of a draft, they'd be willing to put forward a pontoon boat. You know, again, with a small engine, you know, just to get you there and back that can be lifted and tied to the dock. So they have thought about that. They've provided some solutions. They're willing to write that into an agreement, which is odd in a site plan agreement. But again, they're willing to do that to address that specific concern in this location.
Thank you for that. And to your second point, I'm fairly familiar with getting to islands. I won't tell you how many years, too many. Started at 2 weeks old, but just I would like to, if I thought possibly this could be done, I would like to see that there was an agreement that there would be no dredging. Is there any reason that we can't put that into an agreement? I know you can say that MOECP or whoever it is that has the right to approve or deny, but is there not something that we can put in our bylaw that we'd be approving for this to restrict that dredging scenario?
Director Whitlam. I see your finger moving.
Can you smell the wood burning? It's
cold.
So I think in terms of Section 41 under the Planning Act that governs site plan control, I think a restriction like that would be hard to justify in context to the legislation. However, if the parties, being the township and the applicant, agree to put it into that site plan agreement, it does become a contract between those parties. So if they're both on board, then I would say yes.
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Mayor, I think that was the intent, that not we just say it has to be there, that there has to be agreement on both sides. So That's the natural. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis, you wanted to weigh in again?
Oh, absolutely. This is a fun one. And I appreciate that Mr. Myers is prepared to put something in writing in the way of a contract with regards to restrictions on the use of the property. Again, for public input, I think it's really important we get a better handle on water depth. If that can be provided, I would really, really appreciate it. My next question is to planning. If we set up a contract with Mr. Myers with regards to how we will use this dock and the surrounding wetland area, obviously something that he's totally agreed to, does that also restrict any future owners of the Myers property?
Director Whitlip.
So through the mayor, the agreement is registered on title, and it has the standard agreement wording that it's binding upon heirs and successors. So look, a future owner could always try and challenge that enforceability, but again, the short answer is yes, it is binding and runs with the property.
Thank you. I appreciate the commitment from Mr. Myers. Mr. Zurbach's explanations are also quite helpful on this. But again, just as a matter of reference, water depths at the point where this dock is going to be located would be most helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Myers, do you have something to add?
Yeah, well, first off, as to the dredging, yeah, we don't intend to do that. If the water ever got that low, hell, we could probably take an ATV from the gravel driveway across to the island on the lake bottom, but we don't intend to do that either. And as far as building the dock, yes, if it becomes unusable, that becomes our expense. But if it's a floating dock, it can always be moved to somebody else's location. So that's, yes, we've addressed that. And also, I have been going up the island since 1967, I think. And the area where we want to build the dock, I have never seen dry land at that point. Yes, I've never ever seen dry land on the channel. Like I said, it's been ankle deep, but there's always been a little bit of water flow through parts of it. But anyway, my son and I are pretty confident that where we want to place the dock is always had water flow in it, and probably would certainly support a tin boat or a pontoon boat. Anyway, thanks again.
Thank you. Councillor Bochek.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, question to Director Whiblett. Is there anything in the planning law, provincial planning law, that states that a dock cannot be sitting on the bottom in times of low water? Is there anything in the Planning Act, or is there anything in our planning documents that restrict that? Because I've seen on many places on Georgian Bay the dock sitting on the bottom. Yeah, a floating dock that in low water will go down and sit on the bottom. And so my question is there anything in the Planning Act or anything in our bylaws that would restrict this application from going through?
It's through the mayor to Councillor Bochek. No, it just comes down to a matter of good planning. And, we heard the comment about, the challenges of dealing with high and low water conditions in this municipality. But the short answer again is no.
There's no. Okay, thank you. So second to that, if we move to not approve this, based on what I'm hearing about the Planning Act and our planning department and the recommendation, if this were to end up in the OLT, we wouldn't stand a chance, is my feeling. And it would be a long legal battle that the township would be in a losing position. So
I think you're getting at least 2 steps ahead of us, because we're not approving it today.
I understand, but in the future, it'll come back for approval. So I had to get clarification from the Planning Act whether this was an infraction, and apparently it is not. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Just in terms of clarifying, I'm not from the ministry, but it's not just the Planning Act, it's also our bylaws. And we don't have a bylaw at the moment for that, but I can guarantee you that our waterfront planning group working group, I should say, is recommending that Georgian Bay waters be governed by water level issues and access. So that's going to be hopefully written into our new bylaws in the relatively near future. So that's if we don't do that, we end up building all sorts of docks and all sorts of wetlands, and it doesn't make sense. Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any more hands raised, so I have moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved that the report regarding zoning bylaw amendment Z26-03 be received, and that the comments provided at the public meeting held at April 14th, 2026 be received, and that council directs staff to prepare a recommendation report and bylaw for council's consideration at a subsequent meeting after all consultation comments have been received and considered. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. I've been asked for a 5-minute break. We're taking a 5-minute break, and then we'll get to the next application, please. All right. I'm very glad I said 5 minutes so we could get this break done in, I guess, 8 minutes. That's not bad. It's not bad. We now are moving on to official plan amendment application O26-01 and zoning bylaw amendment application Z26-04 for 146 Prisque Road. And to our clerk to tell us about the correspondence, please.
One letter was received from Kaylee Nicholson, Chief Building Official, stating building permits are required and that the septic system will be reviewed during the permit process. If it is undersized or additional capacity is needed, upgrades or minor variants will be required, and any construction in the floodplain must be fully documented by the designer. One letter was received from the District of Muskoka staff stating recommend denying the application because the proposal seeks to permit and expand structures including docks, a wraparound deck, and a storage shed within a provincially significant wetland where the development is prohibited under the PPS and the Muskoka official plan, and in the absence of an OWES evaluation to properly refine or confirm the wetland boundary, the existing mapping and policy constraints must be treated as valid. And 8 letters of support were received from L. Elnor, Lawrence and Anita Antonina, Sharon Potter, Steve Musica, Joanne Gordon, Joyce Nowson, Stacy Murphy, and Jason Reeker.
Thank you very much. Planner Wanfor, you are on this one as well, I understand. And if you'd be so kind to summarize the application for us, please.
Thank you, and through the mayor. The subject property is a peninsula with an area of 2,035 square meters and a frontage of 55.88 meters on Georgian Bay. The lands front onto Toby's Bay, provincially significant wetland located in Sunset Bay. The purpose and effect of the applications is to introduce a site-specific exception policy in the township's official plan, which will permit 2 docks within the provincially significant wetland. The amendment also seeks to rezone the property to a shoreline residential island type 1 exception zone to facilitate the expansion and reconstruction of the legally existing shoreline dwelling and its attached deck, as well as to bring an existing storage shed into compliance and permit an increased dock width. Note that the sleeping cabin was constructed in 1940 and is not subject to the applications. The applicant proposes to increase the dwelling's gross floor area by 76.5%, or 169.25 square meters, through the addition of a larger entry, a covered deck, and a second story. The lot coverage would increase from 8.14% to 13.1%, exceeding the maximum 8% permitted under the current zoning. In addition, the setback from the high water mark to the deck would be reduced from 13.17 meters to 4.76 meters, which also represents the proposed setback to the environmental protection zone, where a minimum 15-meter setback is required. The applicant proposes to increase the height of the dwelling to 8.6 meters. However, legally existing shoreline dwellings with a non-compliant front yard are permitted a maximum height of 6 meters, and the shoreline residential island type 1 zone permits a maximum height of 8 meters. The proposal also includes an increase to the shoreline activity area to 29.9%, whereas a maximum of 25% is permitted, and seeks to recognize a shed with a front lot line and environmental protection zone setback of 14.56 meters, as well as a separation of 1.33 meters from the sleeping cabin, where a minimum separation of 5 meters is required. The L-shaped dock on the western shoreline was constructed between 2018 and 2023 without the issuance of a building permit. The section connecting to the land has a width of 4.27 meters, whereas a maximum width of 4 meters is permitted. The remainder of the dock complies with the applicable width, length, and projection requirements. The provincial planning statement states that natural heritage features and areas shall be protected for the long term. Development and site alteration shall not be permitted in significant wetlands. An environmental impact study by Astor Environmental Services concluded that the proposed deck and dwelling renovations will not encroach on fish habitat wetlands, or protected species habitat, and that existing docks are low impact. The EIS recommends comprehensive construction, spill prevention, vegetation protection, wildlife protection, and post-construction stabilization measures to avoid environmental impacts, with limited native planting proposed to achieve a modest net gain in vegetation. Hutchison Environmental Sciences conducted a peer review and generally supported the study's approach, but identified several areas requiring clarification or strengthening, including mapping of aquatic vegetation and fish habitat, assessment of boating impacts, confirmation of dock footprints, updated regulatory references, clearer and more prescriptive mitigation measures, revised timing windows, and refined renaturalization plans. These peer review comments have been provided to the applicant, and staff understand the EIS will be updated accordingly. Within the District of Muskoka official plan, the subject lands are designated waterfront area. The official plan permits low density and waterfront related uses in this designation, while prioritizing protection of ecological features, natural character, visual aesthetics, and compatibility with existing development. Development and site alteration shall not be permitted in provincially significant wetlands and provincially significant coastal wetlands, but may be permitted in coastal or other wetlands as well as fish habitat, provided it has been demonstrated through an environmental impact study that there will be no negative impacts on the natural features or their ecological function, and in accordance with provincial and federal requirements. Staff understand that the applicant has since submitted the revised wetland mapping per the EIS, and the boundary has now been updated on the Ontario Natural Heritage Mapping. The points of contact for the floating docks are now located outside of the delineated wetland boundary. Within the township's official plan, the lands are designated waterfront and are located within the Honey Harbor coastal waterfront community, where single detached dwellings and accessory uses, including shore-related structures, are permitted. General and residential policies require appropriate setbacks from the high water mark, retention of vegetation, limits on building height and bulk, controls on accessory structures, and prohibitions on shoreline alteration, dredging, or hazardous docks without approvals. Community-specific policies emphasize protecting natural heritage, scenic character, and recreational amenities, limiting the size and extent of new or expanded development, and concentrating shoreline activity areas generally to a maximum of 25% of the frontage on the shoreline, or 23 meters. Development is further constrained by flood hazard and natural heritage policies, which restrict habitable development below the regulatory flood elevation and prohibit development or site alteration within the provincially significant wetlands. The lands are zoned Shoreline Residential Island Type 1, which permits a detached dwelling and accessory uses. Note that the zoning appears to be misaligned with the property's boundaries, and the applicant is proposing to correct this by ensuring the entirety of the subject lands above the high water mark are zoned to a Shoreline Residential Island Type 1 exception zone. The existing dwelling, constructed in 1965, is legal non-complying with respect to the shoreline setback and may be expanded only within the limited permissions of Section 411E of the zoning bylaw, provided no new issues of noncompliance are created, and expansions maintain a minimum 15-meter setback from the environmental protection zone. The proposed increases in building height and lot coverage exceed the SRI 1 zoning standards, and the as-of-right expansion provisions apply only where the EP zone setbacks are met, which is not the case for the existing dwelling. The existing deck and shed also do not comply with current setback, separation distance, and/or encroachment provisions. As the docks are in areas zoned EP-PSW, which do not permit any buildings or structures, these areas will also need to be rezoned. Pictured here are some photos taken this past winter. Staff will conduct a second site visit and include additional photos in the recommendation report. The public meeting is intended solely to convey information and receive comments. It provides an opportunity for ongoing dialogue. Prior to the preparation of a recommendation report for council's consideration, planning staff require the submission of a site evaluation report, detailed documentation demonstrating conformity with applicable flood hazard policies, and a revised application that includes the rezoning of the water to permit the existing docks within the EP-PSW zone. Confirmation of the dwelling's minimum opening elevation is also required, along with the revised environmental impact study addressing the comments provided by the township's environmental consultant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have to ask if the owners or agents are present, but I will ask if you wish to say anything.
Good morning, Your Worship, members of council, members of township staff, and any members of the public listening online. My name is David Scarcelloni, junior planner with Morgan Planning and Development, and I'm the agent for the applicants who are present, Chris and Sarah Pawlowski, regarding all planning matters as it relates to 146 Prisque Road, and more specifically applications 026-01 and Z26-04. If we could, or apologies, actually, I'm going to share my screen to have the presentation up, if that's all right. There we are. Just moving into a overview of the description of the subject property, of course known as 146 Prisque Road in the Honey Harbor community area in the township of Georgian Bay. The property is approximately 2,000 square meters with 55.9 meters of frontage measured southwest to northeast above the high water mark. Along the subject property, it's duly accessed via Toby's Bay and the Prisque Road private right-of-way. The property currently facilitates a single detached dwelling, a shed, a sleeping cabin, and 2 docks, one protruding off the north side of the property and one protruding off the west side of the property. So we can move on to the next slide. The proposed development is an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment which seek to permit an upper story addition as well as a small addition to the primary story of the single detached dwelling. The second story addition is going to be just over 110 square meters in floor area, with the covered portion of the attached deck being 32.9 square meters, with the open portion of the attached deck being 80.4 square meters. As Shania mentioned in her presentation, the applications also seek to legalize 2 existing docks in conjunction with the adjacent provincially significant wetland. And the north-facing dock, shed, and sleeping cabin have, as mentioned, existed on the property for many years, predating the current township planning documents. Moving into a more zoomed-in photo of the concept plan, which we previously discussed. The dwelling, sleeping cabin, shed, and 2 docks are previously existing. And the only portion of the dwelling that is to be expanded footprint-wise is on the roadside of the property and does not encroach further to the water. The only points of encroachment are with the attached deck, which will be limited in points of contact to the ground and partially covered. And the proposed shed and the 2 docks will be legalized with the application. Moving into a detailed floor plan of what's existing on the property and what's to be expanded. On the left, you can see the basement level or cellar level, with the only point of expansion being the new entry, which is almost 10 square meters. The rest of the basement level will stay the same. In the middle of the image on screen, you'll see the main floor level. On the right, you'll see the second story, or I guess main story of the expansion, the only expansion to the footprint. And the remainder of the items outlined in red on the center image are the covered deck and uncovered deck. And on the right, you can see the second floor level, which won't increase the footprint, and it's primarily a vertical expansion. It's worth noting that the dwelling will be 2 stories in height after the expansion, subject to grading. As you can see here, the elevation drawings, this is what the proposed dwelling will look like post-expansion. As you can see, the deck is along the east, south, and west edges of the dwelling, and the proposed expansion you can see in the top right along the left side of that image. It's only on the cellar level and the main floor level. Moving into some site photos, these 2 were previously shown by Shania on her drawing. They kind of convey a colder day on the property. You can see the existing dwelling, a small staircase to the main level, and several trees. This photo on the right is taken from the shore ramp of the existing dock along the west side of the property, and you can see the mature vegetation of the property provides adequate cover from the shoreline side. Moving on, the photo on the left was taken from the dock protruding along the west side of the property. As you can see, the mature vegetation covers the proposed location of the second story addition of the dwelling. And you can kind of see it here. We'll move into it later in the presentation, but the shoreline is primarily a rock face. And on the right, you can see the existing shed and sleeping cabin from left to right. They have existed for a long time on the property, and the separation distance of the 2 structures will be addressed by our zoning bylaw amendment. Moving on to a few more photos taken more recently. These photos convey the west-facing dock, as you can see in both images. The only points of contact are into the rock with a high water mark, and the remainder of the dock is floating, including the ramp. And the only points of contact are outside of the provincially significant wetland. Same thing with the dock retreating off the north side. The only points of contact of this dock are outside of the provincially significant wetland, and the remainder of the dock is floating. The points are secure in a rock face, and the dock can move up and down with the water level subject to the ramp. Moving on to some warmer weather. On the left, you can see a photo taken from the lake, which illustrates the mature vegetation cover that you'll see on the property. As you can see, it almost completely covers the location of the proposed second-story addition. And you'll see a more zoomed-in photo from the same angle on the right. Moving on to another photo taken from the water. This one's taken from more of a southwesterly angle. As you can see, the shoreline is almost completely rock. And once again, the western-facing deck is completely fastened to the rock, and the mature vegetation covers the entire roof of the existing dwelling where the proposed second story is to be attached. One more photo of the same conditions which illustrate the whole western shore of the property. One more thing to note in this photo is that on the left you can see a large rock face past the edge of the dock. Once again, just illustrating that the proposed addition will not be visually anomalistic from the water. And once again, as Shania discussed, the wetland mapping has been reevaluated and moved to be just past the high water mark rather than before where it was on the property. Our environmental consultant submitted with the OWES to move the wetland layer past the high water mark, and now, as we mentioned, the only points of contact of the docks are outside of the water mark, or outside of the wetland layer. Apologies. Moving into the conclusion, the proposal once again is an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. They seek to permit a second-story addition to the existing dwelling along with an attached deck while legalizing all existing structures on the property, including the shed and the two docks. The OPA and ZBA is supported by the application to maximize the quality of the existing residential use on the property. A technical study was retained, an environmental study prepared by Astor Environmental Solutions, who is on the call online. The study confirms that the site is suitable and compatible with the proposed development and that the existing wetland on the property is a mapping error. The technical study was peer reviewed, the comments were received, and the EIS is currently being updated to satisfy the comments, and revised wetland boundary, which has been submitted, and you saw on the previous slide, to correct the error. Once again, the application is consistent with provincial, county, and municipal policies promoting residential development, which maintains the character of the surrounding shoreline area while maintaining natural heritage features and their ecological functions. For council's understanding, we're working with the district regarding the comments received. We have updated the wetland boundary once again and have a meeting scheduled with district staff to discuss their comments. We will be resubmitting the application to include the updated EIS with a site evaluation report, as well as with any district comments addressed, as well as comments from this meeting addressed. We would also like to note there have been 8 letters of support which have been submitted over the last weekend. We appreciate all letters of support from neighbors. And to reiterate, we are here to listen to any feedback given from the public or members of council and look forward to bringing the application back to council at a later date. Thank you to everyone for listening. The applicant is at the stand with me to field any questions that may arise. And Mike Francis from Astor Environmental Solutions is on the call to provide any answers to ecological questions that might arise. And Chris, the applicant, would like to speak a little bit on the application as well.
Please go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Your Worship, councillors, members of staff. Just to put some context around this, myself, Chris Pawlowski, owner of 146 Prisque Road, and my wife, Sarah Pawlowski, we are full-time residents in Honey Harbor. This is a 4-season property that we've been enjoying, myself since 2015, Sarah since 2017. We have a 4-year-old son that we've welcomed to this world, living at the property as well, enjoying the Honey Harbor Public School. The reason for the expansion on our house is to support our growing family. We also have my parents cottaging here in Honey Harbor, While they might not be happy I state this in a public meeting, they are turning 70 this year, and they have a water access only property. I imagine at some point to continue visiting Honey Harbor, it will be through our property, visiting, staying with us. Sarah is not from the region. She is from Niagara Falls. She has family come and visit summer and winter. Our docks with our 4-year-old to enjoy swimming on a waterfront property and to support friends and family visiting. You know, we love living in Honey Harbor. I sat on the Honey Harbor Community Advisory Group for 4 years. I am the vice president of the Prisque Road Association. Sarah volunteered as the director of art for the first Honeybee Festival. You've probably seen our 4-year-old son running around at Rock on the Dock, at the Canada Day celebrations, everything in Honey Harbor. You know, we love this community and we're just looking to use our property to the best we can and to better support our family. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. If it makes your parents feel any better, they're not the only ones turning 70 this year. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this? Okay, if anybody changes their mind, let us know. Meanwhile, we have at least one councillor who's keen, so Councillor Graziano, can we start with you, please?
Thank you, and through your worship, not necessarily so keen, but I did want to say first and foremost, thank you for your civic volunteerism. It's fantastic that you guys are a part of the community and deeply entrenched in it. I want to say that context is everything. You know, initially I looked at this and I was not necessarily concerned, but the size was something that stood out to me. But now understanding specifically why it's needed, given the growing family and the fact that it's a full 4-season cottage home mix, it makes total sense. So thank you again for providing that context. And you know, I know we're not making a decision here and now, but I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, please.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, pretty complete. And I also too appreciate the commitment to the community by the owner, and I do trust that his 4-year-old is taking advantage of our library services. I had to get that plug in, sorry. I've gone to the GeoHub, pulled up a mapping from, if I've got this right, I think it's 2013. The single floating dock, not the L shape, but the other one is on dry land in that photo, overhead photo, aerial photo. Whenever I hear, like the District of Municipal, whenever I hear something's close to significant, eventually significant wetland, I become very, very, I guess, defensive of the wetland. Looking at the overhead of all the cottages in that area, I figure any damage has already been done. I'm not sure that what's being proposed here is going to do any more damage than it has already been done. But I think we got to reconsider that one of the two docks anyway. And I would love to see that the owner try and make some concessions in order to make his impact on the wetland area to be a little less of an issue. So those are the things I'd like to see happen when this goes back to the planning department. But I appreciate the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Predko, please. Oh.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of other questions or comments as well. The EP zone with the 4.7 meter setback for the deck. I'm kind of trying to understand that border of the EP zone, and maybe someone could explain it to me just a little bit, because as far as it looks like on the aerial photos, it looks like it's basically a dirt or a rock face. And I'm not sure why that has been identified as a boundary and not the natural shoreline that is beyond that sort of boundary that's been drawn for the EP zone. I'm not sure if Shania or...
Through the mayor, I'll share my screen and perhaps Councillor Predko could point out?
Sure. Actually, on the site plan where the 4.7 meter line is drawn is so if you zoom in on the south side and on the southeast corner of that deck.
Down here, correct?
Yep, yeah. So that one corner of the deck that is pointing down. So we've got the contour line, but that's not that seems to be the EP zone. It's not the high water mark, I don't believe.
Through the mayor, that's actually the high water.
Oh, is it?
mark.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So it wasn't. Oh, I see now. It's 1.774. Okay, I thought that was not.
And the high water mark is the front lot line.
Oh,
yes.
So there is another dock that projects south of that property that I guess is beyond the high water mark. So that.
Through the mayor, that is correct. The neighboring property does have a dock there.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I was just confused as to the labeling of that line. Thank you.
It appears the neighbor's property is a very unusual shape with a little sliver going out. Where am I? Yes, Councilor Cooper, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation, both from staff and consultants and so forth. I have really a question for Shania, or actually the director. Given the applications we've been looking at this morning, is there any reason that you could not provide in this kind of application photographs from 2013 and 2018, because 2020 isn't available, from GeoHub? Because that is where many of us are going to see what's going on with the water levels and wetlands and so forth. So is there any reason those pictures couldn't be included in these presentations?
Through the mayor. So to be clear, what you're asking is the tool that I'm hearing council is already using, you'd like those photos put into the staff reports?
Correct.
Okay.
Is that doable?
Yeah.
Just because we're referencing them anyway, and I think it would help tell the story to the public. So given that, and looking at 2013 and 2018, my comments are that the western facing part of the property and the docks facing to the west and the front of the cottage are all sort of in that western viewpoint. Unfortunately, the other dock is if you look at 2013, as has already been pointed out, is in a mudflat, wetland, whatever, maybe not designated anymore, but nevertheless dry. And I have difficulty with that, and would recommend that if there's any dock expansion needed or required, it should be focused on the west side where there's quite clearly water depth, and there's not the same wet water depth that's available on the north side of this peninsula, shall we say. So that's my comment about the docks. The lot coverage is significantly different, and but I can understand if you're living year round here that you need maybe more than is typically allowable. But I did have a question about the elevation, the eastern elevation. I almost see 3 stories, not 2, because the basement level is exposed. So the old view from the canoe, it's maybe 2.5 stories, but I think our limitation is 2 stories, is it not?
Through the mayor to you, Councilor Cooper. Yeah, we have recognized that the building is by definition 2 stories, just because the bottom story is a cellar by definition, and that means it's more than 50% below finished grade.
So more than 50% of that floor is below finished grade. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Through the mayor, sorry, there may be some confusion because the initial drawings proposed did not have the grading done. So those attached to the report may appear as if it's 3 stories, but they have since revised the elevation plans and the grading. So now it is 2 stories.
Okay, so if
Those were the ones included in the presentation that you saw.
Oh, well, I saw on the eastern side, I saw garage doors and various things, and on the east side that looked like it was another floor. And you're saying that's all been covered in or will be covered in?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So above the cellar story is on average above 50% below finished grade. The garage is accessible at that bottom level, but around the building on the other three sides in total, the basement or cellar story, I guess by definition, is below 50% or above 50% below
So you're
average
taking
finished
into
grade.
account- So it's not the east side that's meeting that qualification. You're adding up what's happening elsewhere to allow for this. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, it's all the walls of the cellar.
I see. And that's part of our bylaws. We allow that?
Through the mayor, we actually measure dwelling height from the front elevation, which is the elevation which is facing the water. So I believe that would be the west
Okay.
elevation.
Thank you. That's helpful and can add it to our list for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, Councillor Bocheck.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Very detailed report offered, and I want to thank you for coming here and explaining it. Junior planner, I don't know where that comes in. Maybe you should review that with your boss. But a very well done presentation. My concern is similar to Councillor Cooper's, is the one dock on the far end of the property. Question to the owner of that property, if I may, how long has that dock been in existence?
Sure. So the dock, as Councillor Jarvis pointed out, is on the 2013 imagery. When I moved to the property, I replaced the ramp and the dock. You can see from one of our support letters that it was a decrepit dock, I believe is the wording they used. So it was replaced. Later, it was actually repositioned. So to Councillor Cooper and Councillor Jarvis's comments, it was actually positioned further away from the property line. The initial dock from the initial property owners, the angle crossed where the property line would have extended into the water. So the dock has been moved and repositioned into deeper water and further from the property line. So looking at the high water, I believe that in most years it should not be touching the bottom. It's in the deepest part of that bay. And as you can see, and as it was pointed out, there are many docks further down in that waterway in much shallower water.
Great, thank you. And my second question, perhaps I could address, or our CBO could address my question. Kaylee, do you, and I know this is part of the building department's obligation, but reviewing the planning documents, do you see any infringement on anything within this? And I'm talking setbacks, property lines, septic bed issues, anything like that that we need to be concerned about? Or have you looked into it that far?
Through the mayor, I did make original comments based on the septic system that if it does need an upgrade, it'll need a variance because they won't meet the 30-meter setback. So that has already been, it will be addressed at the actual building permit stage. As for the rest of it, we don't check that until we get the application, and what will accompany that is the zoning certificate with the particulars on it.
That's super. Yeah, thank you very much.
Councillor Jarvis, you seem to be keen today. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to acknowledge the owner's correction on the positioning of that dock, and he is correct. It's been moved. If you look at the imagery from later, more recent dates, it's in a location that probably would not be an issue come low water. I would still question why two docks are needed, and maybe there should be a concession made with regards to that. But I do have a question for planning. It goes to the questions with regards to the third story in the basement. If just hypothetically speaking, Shania, if we were looking at 3 stories from the front or west face, would that be allowed? Or would it be a height issue, not 3-story an issue?
Through the mayor, if on the front elevation being the west elevation, the
Yeah.
grade was not done and that basement was exposed, that would create 3 stories and a conformity issue with the official plan policy.
Yeah, so under the concept of if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. That's 3-story building, despite the fact that maybe from the west elevation, it doesn't appear that way. And I do have a concern with that. And I'm glad it was brought to light by Councillor Cooper. Again, I have less of an issue with the dock, though I would like to see concessions made somewhere along the lines by this homeowner with regards to the to this a project plan in way of maybe minimizing the height via the 3rd story, proximity to the high water mark, and perhaps not having as many docks as they seem to think they need. Those are my thoughts. Thank you. And I don't think I have any more.
Time will tell. Councillor Cooper, that's an old hand, I believe. Okay, just checking. No, it's waiting. Yeah, couple of questions to our planner. I mean, I see in one of the things a bold red line immediately to the north. I presume that's defining the Honey Harbor Urban Center, and that we're just outside of that.
Through the mayor, that is correct.
Okay.
That is
Wow.
the
I was
urban
right on that
center
one.
boundary.
But you know, this is in some ways an almost urban setting. Call it the suburbs. Didn't know Honey Harbor had suburbs, but we've now decided they do. I found it very interesting in one of the aerial photos of this provincially significant wetland that I understand this whole area is. I'm sure I counted 30 odd docks. And I'm just, and when I look at it, the over aerial photos, a lot of the water looks surprisingly clear for a wetland. There are definitely areas that don't. And it may have been, and I'm just thinking with all the use in the area at this point, how accurate is that definition? And I'm thinking, you know, the prior application they referred to a provincially significant wetland, and it looked it. And so, is the whole area defined? I mean, we know that it's part of the dry land area was even included initially. Is the whole area? I can't even say that word for some reason. A PSW?
Through the mayor, all of Sunset Bay and that narrow channel that weaves in through other islands is part of the provincially significant wetland.
And has had docks in it probably for the last century.
Through the mayor, that is correct,
Okay.
according to aerial imagery.
Yeah, you know, so to me, I don't find that argument that there's docked and provincially significant wetland as convincing in this particular application versus others, just because of based on the aerial photography and the common use. I also think that it's very important to note that a lot of the neighbors think this is fine, and I think that's important. Just like I enjoyed the Shore Road Allowance application we had earlier today, and the neighbors agreed what to do about the situation on their boundary and the property. It's so great when neighbors get along, much preferred. Not always the case, but okay, I can dream. But no, those are my comments about with regards to this development is that I think it's more than we usually would consider, but I think at the same time, what we allow for our urban centers is definitely not what we allow for our, I'll call it typical waterfront, allow me to use the word cottages. And I think that we have to kind of reflect that density in this particular area and you know, the historically relatively small lots. Council, any other comments or questions at this time?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to address comments regarding the height elevations. While height would be measured from the water side, just like to reiterate that this is by definition a two-story structure, and the average finished grade around all walls of the structure is above 50% of the height of that cellar. And while the garage is accessible from that bottom story, the remainder of the walls of the dwelling make up for it. Thank you.
I have moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved that the report regarding official plan amendment O26-01 and zoning bylaw amendment Z26-04 be received, and that the comments provided at the public meeting held on April 14, 2026 be received, and that council directs staff to prepare a recommendation report and bylaw for council's consideration at a subsequent meeting after all consultation comments have been received and considered. All those in favor? And I got lots of hands. That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And this concludes the Planning Act public meeting portion of the agenda. All comments, questions, concerns raised at the public meeting have been recorded and will be taken into consideration by staff prior to recommendation being brought forward. We declare the public meeting closed at 10:46. Thank you. All right. Mr. Donaldson, are you ready to roll? All right, so we're now going to go to item 9 on our agenda, the zoning bylaw amendment Z26-02 for 377B Macey Bay Road. Mr. Donaldson, please.
Thank you, and through the mayor, I'll just share my screen.
Gentlemen.
Subject lands have a lot area of 11.86 acres with a frontage of approximately 380 meters onto Georgian Bay. Subject lands can be accessed from Macey Bay Road via a registered right-of-way over the lands municipally known as 375 Macey Bay Road. Property currently contains 3 non-complying dwellings, 1 accessory storage building, and 2 privies. Otherwise, the property is for the majority in its natural state, containing areas of dense, mature tree cover, areas of exposed granite rock, and low-lying vegetation throughout. As a reminder, the purpose of this zoning bylaw amendment application is to rezone the approximately 0.35 acre or 0.14 hectare portion of the property currently zoned tourist commercial type 2 to shoreline residential type 5 zone. The subject property does not currently support a tourist commercial establishment, nor is one contemplated. The development contemplated for these lands is single residential uses. The CT2 zone does not permit single residential dwellings, whereas the SR5 zone does. The applicant has had an environmental impact statement completed in accordance with the township and district official plans. The EIS contemplates the entirety of the development proposal, including the subject zoning bylaw amendment, the subsequent consent and easement applications, the extension of the existing driveway, and the future development of the newly created parcels of land. The environmental impact statement, peer-reviewed by Hutchinson Environmental Sciences, found that most of the potential impact from the future development will be concentrated in the open rock areas. No significant impact on the PSW is anticipated, as all development will be outside the 30-meter setback from the wetland. The mitigation measures identified in the environmental impact study attached to the staff report will be implemented through site plan control process, which will apply to any future development of the lands. Please note that the applicant has also submitted a functional servicing report, a hydrogeological assessment, a geotechnical investigation report, and a stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessment in support of the rezoning and future development proposal. As defined in the provincial planning statement, the subject property is located on rural lands. Section 2.6 of the PPS identifies resource-based recreational uses and residential development, including lot creation, as permitted uses on rural lands. The proposed zoning change will not affect the existing character of the area, as no development is included within this application. The amendment simply corrects an assumed zoning error by appropriately zoning a 0.4 hectare portion of land for locally suitable residential uses. Any future development is anticipated to occur within open rock areas and is not expected to require significant removal of mature vegetation. The subject lands are designated waterfront area under the District of Muskoka official plan. Resource-based recreational uses, including low density single residential dwellings and limited year-round low-density single-unit residential development, are permitted uses on the waterfront area. Although no development is proposed as part of this application, the permitted uses in the SR5 zone align with the district policies related to waterfront area, ensuring that the lands are appropriately developed with low-density single-unit residential development in the future. The lands are also designated waterfront under the Township of Georgian Bay official plan and are not located within any coastal waterfront or inland waterfront community areas. Legally existing residential uses, as well as new single detached residential and accessory uses, are permitted in this designation. Rezoning the 0.14 hectare portion of the property to a zone that permits the continued, locally appropriate residential uses is considered suitable and justified. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the application and believe that the application is in conformity with applicable policy documents. Staff are recommending that Council approve the zoning bylaw amendment application Z2602 and enact the amending bylaw. Please note that the clerk has a revised resolution to address delays related to the OLT's pending decision on housekeeping bylaw settlement. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one question before I turn it over to staff. And it's Madam Clerk, we're making reference to this OLT appeal in the House Cap. Why is that applicable to this case and not to other situations? Oh, or does the Director Whitliff answer that? Okay. Director Whitliff, over to you. You want to do this, don't you?
Well, we are prepared. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Why in this case and not the others? Because this case has a bylaw ready for passing. And unfortunately, we find ourselves in an unanticipated situation. As council will recall, the appeal of the township's housekeeping bylaw was settled by the parties. The parties presented a mutually agreed upon settlement agreement to the OLT at a hearing on March the 4th. That went through fine, simply awaiting the OLT to formally approve the settlement by way of issuing its decision. There were no issues at that hearing. What that settlement agreement and its associated order, the way it was drafted by the lawyers, did not contemplate was that we would find ourselves almost 6 weeks later without the written decision from the OLT formally approving the settlement. And unfortunately, that puts us in an unusual situation where we can't actually pass bylaw amendments until the housekeeping amendment is appealed. And it's a nuance of the way the order was written. So we anticipate that order will come down any day now. We've been saying that for 6 weeks. So what we're recommending in this case is that council approve this application, authorize the passing of the bylaw, but that bylaw not actually be signed until we get that OLT decision, which we and our solicitor fully expect to be approved.
A follow-up, and then we'll get back to actually talking about the application itself. But this appeal was launched quite a while back, but it only is affecting bylaws in this I'll call it in-between period, not when we were being appealed, but because the OLT has made a decision and we need, so now because they've done that, we have to wait to have it in our hands.
That is correct. It should have been a waiting period of quite frankly of days. perhaps a week or two, but 6 weeks is quite
I almost
unusual.
wanna use-
Our solicitor, in speaking to him, he's not concerned that there's an issue or cold feet at the OLT. It's just simply bottleneck.
I was going to use a different B word, but I won't. No, I will, because everybody's curious, and that's bureaucracy. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Council. Councillor Cooper, if you can get us back on the actual application versus the extra paragraph we have to throw in.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for the report. I just have a couple of quick questions, and obviously maybe I'm not paying attention, but so I've identified the property. There's a couple of things. First of all, the comment I made recently about photographs from the air still would apply to this application as well. I would really encourage that. If you look at that 2013 and this particular piece of property, the entire back side of it is obviously a wetland, no question. So that would be my point. But the other thing is, and you probably identified this, but this piece of property, I believe, is just to the south, I don't know, west, east, whatever, southwest probably of the existing buildings that are on this property. Is that correct? But they're not connected.
This is 38. This is the
That's
old
not
trailer
right.
park. This property is separate and distinct.
And distinct from the ownership of, like they're
Yes.
completely, oh, okay. And so the next question is, that being the case, I see that there's one, two, maybe three places on this. Are they looking to expand and add or divide lots up or anything like that? You probably mentioned it, but I'm sorry, I may not have paid attention at the right time.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, in the report, it does state that there's going to be subsequent consent and easement applications to create 3 new parcels and retain 1 parcel for residential development.
So there'll be 4 parcels, dividing up, how much, so what would each parcel be?
Through the mayor, I can look at the exact report from the agent, and they have the lot areas and lot frontage, if you wish.
I wanted to understand what we're approving in terms of size that will eventually be there. I want to get a handle on it.
Through the mayor, what you're approving today is a rezoning of that small portion of what's an assumed zoning error. The actual lots and easements are to be approved by the Committee of Adjustment at a subsequent meeting.
But what would those look like? Just,
Through the mayor, I can pull it up and put it on screen.
I realize this isn't what it's being asked for today. I just want to understand what this area will look like in 5 or 10 years.
Report somewhere.
It's in the report?
No.
Previous report.
Well, no, but if you go into the attachment, if you go on page 344 of 683 in my case,
Okay.
they show severed lot 1, 2, and 3 and retain lot 4.
Probably when I fell
And
asleep, but anyway.
It's basically in quarters.
Okay, in quarters. But
Yeah.
how big are they? That's my question.
Well, now you want me to hit the
My map I see right now is GeoHub. That's what I'm looking at. So
Through the mayor, it's displayed on screen now.
yeah, that's the page. Yeah.
sorry.
It's displayed on screen now.
Okay, thank you.
And I can go into the exact.
Just approximately. I just like it's 2 acres, 3 acres, 5 acres. You do meters, but anyway, how many hectares?
So for one lot, it'll be 0.87 hectares. For a second lot, it'll be 0.66 hectares. The third will be 1.08 hectares, and the fourth will be 1.12 hectares.
So,
and to be clear, they're all above the minimum lot areas for the SR5 zone.
okay, so they're somewhere between 1.5 and 2 acres. Is that more or less it? Am I ballpark?
2 plus.
2 plus. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I'm a bit confounded. We have a 329-page report to correct a zoning error on 0.14 hectares of land. Seems like an awful lot of reading just to make a planning correction to an error that was made a while back, or possible error that was made. So I question whether we need I mean, Andrew's great report, but do we really need that much of your time spent with a 329-page report to correct what may be a zoning error, and to me is a minor, a minor thing for us to have to deal with? I have no problem, obviously, confirming that we should be correcting this, but again, that's a lot of reading just to determine that.
Well, I think in fairness to our planning department, they had to do all this work because there are additional applications connected to it. And as Councillor Cooper demonstrated, council might have been curious about the future of this property.
Then they should join the committee of adjustment. We all know what's going on.
Well, apparently we're not all of us are allowed to be in their current.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, but thank you very much for hearing me out.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Well, I have moved by, no, I can't do that. So I'm going to say moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the council approves zoning bylaw amendment application Z26-02, and the council enacts bylaw 2026-022, being a zoning bylaw amendment Z26-02, to further amend zoning bylaw 2014-75 by rezoning a portion of the property municipally known as 377B Macey Bay Road from the commercial tourism type 2 CT2 zone to the shoreline residential type 5 SR5 zone, and for the sake of bureaucracy, that the bylaw 2026-022 take effect upon the Ontario Land Tribunal or OLT decision date regarding bylaw 2025-053 housekeeping zoning bylaw in the matter of OLT-25-000597. All those in favor? And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor. One's not here. That is passed. I didn't have my mic on. I apologize. So now we're going to go to Mr. Kratky on 2026-28 official plan and zoning bylaw review and update. Sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Council, everyone in attendance here today and online. My name, of course, is Jeff Kratky, and I am a registered professional planner employed by the Township of Georgian Bay. Just bear with me here while I get my slideshow going. So, of course, as all of you on council are aware, we've begun our official plan and zoning bylaw review and update through 2026 to 2028. And this is the first project plan. So this is not a part of the public process yet, but this is the first project plan that staff are bringing to council for further review and consideration before we embark upon consultations with working groups and with the public. You may recall from March 10th meeting that you saw a display graphically of this review and update. And on that list that council had indicated interest in, there were 2 items in bullet points that were later summarized as one topic because they're very closely related to each other. And the topic is navigable waterways, water access only lots, and marinas. And so Yesterday, you received a handout supplemental to the staff report that you received. And the supplemental handout of the project plan showed explicit staff consultations with district planning staff. And that was as a result of comments we heard from district staff. And so while we always intended to keep district staff very much informed and participating, they are now shown there. And that inclusion did not change the major dates that were discussed in the staff report. And those are that we hope to be working together with the waterfront working group, first to identify the review matters, the gap issues, and then discuss with them some concepts. And then secondly, as May proceeds, to actually discuss potential amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw. And that would lead us back to council on June 2nd. And if all goes well at June 2nd's meeting with council, when you would consider drafts, we would have a public open house on July 10th and subsequently a public meeting in August with a decision meeting of council in September. And again, if we adhere approximately to this project plan and to our nominal budget, we do not intend to come back with any further updates to council regarding the project plan itself. It would only be if we run into a significant matter of delay or of cost overrun, which again is absolutely not anticipated at this time. So my hope is today to ask you to approve that be it resolved that council accepts the project plan for O2604 and Z2608 regarding water access, navigation, and marinas, including its nominal budget commitment, and authorizes planning staff to implement the project plan without need for further report unless significant revisions become necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any comments or questions? Councilor Cooper.
Yeah, thank you for the report. And I just wanted to say that I've been sitting on the working group about these matters for some time now, and I'm delighted that you're indicating that you're going to consult with some people that, not necessarily that I'm an expert, but that we have experts in our working group. And I hope that there is some discussion with the group, which is, I think, what your plan is. But in addition, I wondered if it would be useful to identify through either this group or elsewhere through the planning department, if there are other parties that would like to, on an ad hoc basis, like to be part of the group for a week or two or three, or at a meeting to present certain concerns, or in particular related to these areas. So if there's others that feel that that we should consult with them, this might be a vehicle to do that, is to meet at the same time as the working group. It can be done by Zoom, which most of our meetings are anyway. So I just throw that out as a, I'm thinking, for example, there may not be anybody that's other than not a waterfront person per se, but maybe a contractor or something like that, or somebody that has some specific knowledge that they'd like to impart. So I'm just offering that as a way of reaching out and making sure that we hear different points of view.
I think further.
Yeah, through the mayor. So yes, I think what we'll do is we'll firm up the membership of the working groups and those three subgroups that the council's already seen. But those working groups have a lot of latitude, and if there's people they wish to consult with or bring to meetings or include, yes, absolutely.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, I was aware there's one working group. I don't know of this other one. I don't know who the members are. I have no idea. So if that is, maybe they could be identified so the working group that I'm involved with understands who we might be able to consult with that group. But otherwise, it sounds like left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing and vice versa. So
Through the mayor. So that was outlined in the staff report and the project outline that council has all seen and approved. And under the umbrella of the planning working group, it's broken into 3 subgroups: the waterfront working group, the rural working group, and the urban center working group. So there do need to be additional members added to get a cross section of expertise. We have a very strong, very strong bench strength right now for the waterfront working group. We've got to expand the overall working group in order to have bench strength in the areas of rural and urban centers.
So that's sort of a specific type of geography, and I was talking about consulting, not necessarily being part of the working group, but come in and talk about certain levels of expertise that might pertain to the waterfront world. That's all. So maybe we can find out from you as this goes along who we could invite to our Zoom meetings to say, okay, so what do you think of this and what do you think of that? And here's our point of view, etc. So that's all I was suggesting, is a collaborative approach as opposed to left hand and right hand. But I understand what you're really talking about are more geographic areas as opposed to skill sets. Thank you.
And I'm going to go one step further for anybody who may be watching this or watching it later on, is that if anyone wants to provide input or questions, we encourage you to write it, whether it's a counselor or a staff member, with your perspective and or willingness to provide input, because that's always appreciated. Because remaining silent means we don't hear you. So that's my encouragement to everyone. Any other comments on this?
And maybe I can just add that my report pointed out that we've set up a web page on the website, and we are very much going to be seeking everybody's visitation to that web page, and very soon we'll be adding documents to it. Amongst those will be the background documents. So any document that we prepare that goes to the working groups is going to be publicly available. And if people use the website sign-up feature that is also going to be advertised in these mailouts and the newsletter and various other features, they will receive automatic notification when we update that web page. And so, yes, we very much want to draw the public to be a part of this discussion at all times. And again, if somebody has a thought, a question, a comment, I encourage them in the case of these amendments to write directly to me, and my email address obviously will be associated with that on our webpage soon. But yes, we do not want this to be done just in some private meetings. It is meant to bring the entire public into the discussion as the case may be. And certainly I think Director Whitleb hasn't been asked this specifically, but if somebody is writing with significant questions and or comments on a matter, I'm sure we can invite them to some of those meetings.
Thank you. I'm going to have to change the mover on this. So I have moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved, the council accepts the project plan for O26-04 and Z26-08 water access, navigation, and marinas, including its nominal budget commitment, and authorizes planning staff to implement the project plan without need for a further report unless significant revisions become necessary. All those in favor? And I have the 6 present, all saying yay. All right. So now I think you have a series of bylaws you want to be moved and shook. Moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Predko. Be it resolved, the Planning Council adopts bylaw 2026-23, closing for parts 1-4 for 210 Birch Acres Drive. All those in favor? That is carried. Moved by Councillor Jarvis, second by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved, the Planning Council adopt bylaw 2026-024 for closing for parts 2-4, 210 Birch Acres Drive. All those in favor? That is carried. Moved by Councillor Hazelton, second by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved, the Planning Council adopts bylaw 2026-025, deeming deeming 210 Birch Acres Drive. All those in favor? And that is carried. Moved by Councillor Bocheck, seconded by Councillor Hazelden. Be it resolved that the Planning Council adopts bylaw 2026-026 to confirm the proceedings of the April 14th, 2026 council meeting. All those in favor? And that is carried. And moved by Councillor Predko, second by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved, the Planning Council is now adjourned at 11:15 a.m. until May 5th, 2026 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Now, with that, do you want to consider it all bumping up our committee of the whole that's scheduled to start at 1 o'clock? Well, yeah, definitely a break. We can start it at 11:30 and then take a lunch break later, or we can start at 11:30 and get it all done by noon and be done for the day if people don't want to talk. All right, let's start the committee of the whole at 11:30 if the clerk doesn't elbow me. Or we can have an early lunch and start it at 12. Yep. Okay. We're going to take a break now, and at 12 o'clock we'll start cow. And if you're going to be hungry, then feed yourself now.
And that's a new link, correct, Karen?
Yes, it's a new link.
I'll say goodbye. Enjoy lunch. We'll see you at